Story 1. Most people have the ability to read. 200 years ago, only a small segment of the population was literate. When William Penn was planning Philadelphia, he named several streets after abundant trees in the area and planted those trees along the streets. It is not confirmed, but the common theory is that people might not have been able to read a street sign, yet they could identify a walnut tree from a spruce. Story 2. Streetlights. You used to have to bring a flashlight or a lantern with you to see where you were going. Anyone or anything could be lurking in the darkness. Story 3. Literally everything. To quote Douglas Adams, I've come up with a set of rules that describe our reactions to technologies. 1. Anything that is in the world when you are born is normal and ordinary and is just a natural part of the way the world works. Anything that is invented between when you are 15 and 35 is new, exciting, and revolutionary, and you can probably get a career in it. Anything invented after you are 35 is against the natural order of things. Story 4. Being reachable 24/7. Getting a hold of someone immediately used to be pretty difficult. You would call the landline if they had one, send a letter, wait until you saw them next, or visit their house personally. Now, if you go more than 6 hours without a social media post, people assume you are dead. Story 5. Gigantic supermarkets where produce is shipped from around the world. Equally, any manufactured snack or food. Story 6. A phone in your pocket that allows you to watch videos while ordering dinner. We did not get a microwave until I was 10. Story 7. Calling emergency services in emergencies. In Baltimore, there used to be fire boxes at the top of each street. You had to run up and open them, which then set off a complicated system of bells in a distant location that determined which fire station was alerted. The emergency telephone number system was introduced in the 1980s. When I was in college in 1995, some places in West Virginia still did not have it. Story 8. Being able to make assumptions about products and services. People love to say things like, "Stop putting ingredient labels on milk. We know what's in the jug." But you can only be confident that you know what's in the jug because Prairie Farms is not allowed to make a dairy-style cornstarch slurry, call it milk, and trick you into giving your kids soft bones. It is not that we are so dumb that we have to be told every single time. It is that they are so untrustworthy that we have to force them to tell us every single time. Regulation is the only reason we can be confident that tap water is treated, and that they will tell us if there is a contamination problem. It is the only reason we can be confident that the person in the ambulance has training, and that the information they learned was accurate. It is the only reason we can be confident that we will get a warning if something is dangerous at work. It is the only reason we can be confident that if someone lies and we are harmed, there is a way to hold them responsible. Story 9. Oh my gods. Putting all your personal information online. I grew up with the internet still being very new, and it was drilled into my head repeatedly by teachers and websites themselves not to put any personal information online, such as your name and address. Then MySpace came along, followed by Facebook, and suddenly everyone is posting their full legal names on the internet for anyone to see. They are selling your information, tracking your every move, and that's only the companies we know are doing it. How many strangers can look up your name, find your address, learn where you live and work, or find your family? Delete Facebook now. Story 10. Most things. We are so immersed in culture that anything that is not related to eating, shelter, survival, or procreation is just something someone made up that seems normal. If you change time or place, wearing a tie would seem strange. Makeup would seem strange. What we eat, how we travel, and how we interact would seem strange. Most parts of everyday life seem normal because you were born and grew up with them. Story 11. More than 3 television stations, including color broadcasts. More than a few radio stations. My family still had a party line telephone until I was in junior high. Story 12. Defecating inside your house. Before the invention of toilets and chamber pots, people would go outside for that. Story 13. Taking pictures of random people without asking for permission is not acceptable. I live in Japan and we see many tourists doing this, even though it is considered inappropriate here. This behavior has become more common only since the advent of the mobile phone with a camera, about 20 years ago. Story 14. Shelf-stable ranch dressing was introduced in 1983. Before that, you had to buy it refrigerated or make your own from a seasoning packet. Story 15. Everything was accessible online. I had to get a book for the TV guide, the newspaper for movie showtimes, and pull out the dictionary when I was stuck on a word. I would stop at a gas station when crossing the state line for an atlas. We made things work. I remember giving people detailed turn-by-turn directions to my house over the landline, then waiting to hear the horn beep when they arrived. Story 16. Vitamin K injections and antibiotics for newborns to prevent early death and brain damage. Non-toxic paint and lead removal. Story 17. No smoking indoors, especially in restaurants. I spent most of my childhood having to call restaurants ahead to see if they had a smoking section. If they did, we could not go. My asthma is triggered by secondhand smoke. I went to college in Massachusetts, where the law had already banned indoor smoking, which was great. While I was in school, my home state changed the law too. I finally got to go to some of the restaurants everyone talked about. Story 18. A reasonable expectation that all your children would make it to adulthood. Prior to vaccines, as well as the implementation of various safety laws like mandatory seatbelts and car seats, it was widely accepted that there was a good chance you would lose a child or two while they were growing up. That was one of the reasons families were so large. You knew some of the children were probably not going to survive, so you hedged your bets by having a few extra. I almost did not exist because of this exact issue. When they were toddlers, which was in the pre-penicillin era, both my granduncle and his younger brother, my grandfather, caught scarlet fever. My grandfather barely survived. My granduncle did not. Epidemics used to be both normal and common. If one of your children came down with something serious, the health board would send someone by and you would be required to quarantine. This was not a mild quarantine, but one enforced strictly. They would tape all your doors and windows shut. If the seals were broken the next day, everyone in the house would be arrested and could spend the rest of the quarantine period in jail. The health officials would then inform the rest of the neighborhood about the diagnosis, who would respond by isolating as well. My grandmother used to tell me about being a child and having to stare forlornly out her window at the empty playground every August because inevitably there would be a mumps outbreak, and all the parents would keep their children home. I believe that the loss of living memory from that era has a lot to do with why vaccine hesitancy has increased. If you went to a parent 100 years ago and said, "If we give your child this free injection, they will be more than 99% immune to that very dangerous disease that comes around every year," they would have taken their children immediately to be vaccinated. Nowadays, some parents say, "Who cares if my child gets the sniffles? They are tough and can deal with it. Better that than whatever chemical content is in those shots," because they have no idea what a pre-vaccine world looked like. Story 19. Having to click a little floppy disk icon to save your work. Most people clicking that button have never actually seen one, but we all just accept that as the universal sign for save. Story 20. The security state. Anyone born in the 21st century does not know a world without the Transportation Security Administration or mass surveillance and data collection. It is all I have known. Story 21. Lack of seasonality of produce. There used to be a strawberry season, asparagus season, corn season, watermelon season, and apple season. While they taste better in season, now you can get them year-round. Shellfish also used to have a season. Story 22. Subscriptions. When I was growing up, there was generally only one common kind: magazine subscriptions. Now, printers on subscription, doorbells on subscription, heated seats on subscription, games on subscription, programs on subscription, food on subscription, wine on subscription, social media on subscription, music on subscription, books on subscription, toys on subscription, news on subscription, budgets on subscription, bank accounts on subscription, storage on subscription, and more. Never ends. Story 23. Two-day shipping and shipped packages in general. I could probably count the number of packages my family received when I was a kid on one hand. My aunts and uncles would sometimes send Christmas packages, but we had to go to the post office to pick them up. The only package I remember receiving was from Delia's catalog, a shirt I wanted because I had a good report card. This was in the United States in a middle-class suburb. Now, I live in a large American city in a high-rise relatively close to a huge Whole Foods, which is also an Amazon distribution and locker center. Amazon delivers packages to my building at least 5 times a day, not including the Amazon packages that come through the United States Postal Service. I just went to order my probiotic, which I realized I was out of, and the delivery slot I picked was from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is currently 9:21 a.m. The thing is, there is nowhere nearby where you can reasonably purchase the same items in-store. A Target is semi-closed, but most departments except decor and a small grocery are closed. Forget CVS. Story 24. Having zero privacy. I had internet safety drilled into me as a kid who grew up in the era when the internet was first becoming easily accessible to most adults. In 3rd or 4th grade, I was allowed to go on Webkins on the family computer as a treat. I don't know if that site even had the chat feature yet. My parents would show me whatever funny videos they liked, and my cool uncle would show me the latest demotivational poster memes. I remember thinking it was revolutionary that I could play Frogger on my mom's Motorola flip phone. Touchscreen smartphones with internet access were a mind-blowing breakthrough in technology. I saved up my money for about a year to buy an iPod Touch when I was 11. I didn't have a functioning smartphone until I was well into middle school, and didn't have my own personal email address until high school. I had to beg my mom to let me join DeviantArt on the prospect of making money with commissions, which never happened. But I made a lot of cool art friends and did many art trades. I never used my real name online. My mom freaked out when she found out I was talking to a stranger on the internet in high school. It was just me and another artist talking about art and anime. I knew better than to share any identifying personal information or my age. If it ever took a weird turn, even for a second, I knew to block and report. It's bizarre to me that people openly share their real names, locations, and pictures of themselves and their children. Even creepier is how much current technology normalizes the complete abandonment of privacy with all the smart home and Internet of Things devices. I don't want or need a fridge or light bulbs that connect to the internet. I don't want to invite a literal listening device into my home to spy on me so the company who makes it can target ads at me, and who knows what else they use the constant stream of data from these devices for. I deleted the Facebook accounts I never used and made my personal Instagram private for some semblance of control. But I am well aware of what a futile effort it is. Story 25. Everyone has a phone on their person. Internet is available in your house. The availability of information at our fingertips is greater than ever and utilized less than ever before. Story 26. The internet for sure. I remember when we first got it and it was a huge thing. Kids now will never understand that. Story 27. Libraries. A place where you can read all you want for free with no expectation for you to buy anything. If it were implemented today, it might be labeled as communism. Story 28. I have come up with a set of rules that describe our reactions to technologies. 1. Anything that exists in the world when you are born is normal and ordinary and is just a natural part of the way the world works. Anything invented between the ages of 15 and 35 is new, exciting, and revolutionary, and you can probably build a career in it. Anything invented after the age of 35 is against the natural order of things. Douglas Adams. Story 29. Government corruption. For example, a United States president stopped a task force monitoring a foreign government accused of influencing the American people. Even Ronald Reagan would have had to fire a cabinet member, and a Senate investigation would have been inevitable. Story 30. Vaccines are important. We have all seen children in iron lungs, but most of us have never experienced that pain ourselves or seen loved ones in them, so we cannot fully understand the suffering. I was vaccinated by the time I was 6 months old, and because of that, I will never have to worry about poliomyelitis, smallpox, diphtheria, and tuberculosis. Story 31. Wearing clothes is interesting and funny, like when we see a caterpillar wearing twigs. There was a time when wearing an animal's skin was also notable. Story 32. I watched Little House on the Prairie as a child and remember asking my mother what it was like to grow up in the old days without electricity. She was a member of the baby boomer generation and took great offense to the question. Story 33. Transportation Security Administration. I was born in 2000. Obviously, I have no memory of a world before the Transportation Security Administration, but I cannot imagine not going to the airport an hour early to pass through poorly designed security lines for a dose of radiation. Story 34. To see a big movie, you used to have to stand in line for an hour. No reserved seats. Now, reserved seats are everywhere. Story 35. In the beginning of Hulu, one did not need an account to watch content, and it was free. Also, many television stations streamed their content on their websites. Story 36. In ecology, this concept is called shifting baselines, coined by fisheries biologist Daniel Pauly in 1995. Every generation has back when I was a kid stories that sound like grumpy old men. We look outside and remember how impressive the fireflies were when we were children and lament the fact that our kids will not see the same. That is our baseline. We long for things to return to our baseline. However, Grandpa had a magnificent display that we will never know. The same is true of fish runs, endless forests, abundant wildlife, and so on. People tend to set their baseline based on their own observations rather than on historical records or earlier, healthier conditions. This leads to a gradual lowering of expectations and acceptance of depleted ecosystems as the new normal. Story 37. This is mostly in Europe and the West. War is not a legitimate, albeit last resort, way of resolving disagreements between countries. Story 38. High-speed internet. I went from having gigabit internet to living where there is only satellite or 4G hotspot availability, and the difference was huge. The power company recently finished running fiber to my area, and it is a game changer. Story 39. Both parents working. When I was a kid, it was just starting to become normal for both parents to need to work. I was really lucky growing up because my mother was always home. She volunteered at my school and everything. The neighborhood mothers all kept an eye on us during the summer when we were off and fathers were at work. Yes, I know that was not a universal thing, but now it is pretty much required for both parents to work just to make ends meet, which means you are being raised by grandparents or a daycare system. Story 40. The fact that I have to pay the government to file a document that proves my car exists and belongs to me is frustrating. For some reason, I have to pay this fee every year, as if it were a subscription. Apparently, the $100 they charge cannot be added to my yearly taxes. Story 41. The 8-hour sleep cycle. For most of human history, humans would sleep for about 4 hours, wake up for a few hours to do light, typically enjoyable activities such as reading, and then go back to sleep for another 4 hours. However, the Industrial Revolution changed our habits on a massive scale, and now nearly no one knows how it used to be. Because we do not have scientific data from that time, we have no idea how it influenced our physical and mental health. It could have made no significant difference, or it could have made us all sick and depressed. We do not know. Story 42. Democracy means having the right to vote. Many people do not appreciate this right, either by not voting or by voting for far-right candidates. Story 43. Cars. If any other invention hit the market today where the inventors were saying, it will kill 5 people a week at random in the United Kingdom and injure countless others, but it is pretty convenient, I am not sure it would make it past legislation. Story 44. Cars. If any other invention hit the market today where the inventors were saying, it will kill 5 people a week at random in the United Kingdom and injure countless others, but it is pretty convenient, I am not sure it would make it past legislation. Story 45. Cell phones with global positioning system. I am a bit of a true crime enthusiast, and I am constantly amazed when people wonder why the police did not track the route someone took on that particular morning. Perhaps because it was the early to mid-1990s and that technology was not available back then. Story 46. Capitalism. Before that, businesses existed to solve problems civilization had. Instead of the corrupted idea of making money, there was incompetence. Story 47. Not littering. It seems strange now to litter, but in the 1970s and 1980s, it was normal to throw trash on the ground. As a result, there was trash everywhere. My mother would take me to the playground behind the elementary school, and I would comb the parking lot for bottle caps, collecting dozens at a time because parents waiting in their cars would throw the caps and bottles out the window into the lot. The United States today is so clean it is almost strange to someone who remembers the 1980s. Story 48. Petrol or gasoline. If you proposed a petrol-powered engine to any regulator in the world now, they would have you committed. You want to let random people move around town on top of a thin tank of highly explosive liquid. Leaks are carcinogenic and can decimate wildlife. The particulates given off cause lung diseases and stain buildings. The infrastructure will harm the climate. Honestly, this makes some of the alternative fuels look nearly sane in comparison. Story 49. Tapping a credit card or smartphone to make a payment feels completely normal now, but not long ago, it would have seemed like science fiction. Story 50. The idea that marriage should define a woman's worth seems normal only because society shaped it that way long before us. I don't mind marriage. I just don't believe it should be the whole story. Story 51. Women being financially independent. When I was younger, only my father had a credit card, and my mother always wrote paper checks for purchases. Additionally, no-fault divorce was not legal everywhere until the 1990s. Story 52. Having to be a ticketed passenger or have a gate pass to go to the gate at an airport changed after September 11, 2001. Story 53. Mobile phones and the internet. My 24-year-old son has never lived without them and wouldn't know how. That said, if my mother were alive, she would be 106. She had to explain to me that in her youth there was no electricity, no domestic gas supply, and no central heating. They used oil lamps which stank badly, and candles. I cannot imagine the practicalities of that, any more than my son can understand a world without computers and portable phones. Story 54. Living out loud. If people had started shouting in public about what they had for breakfast or where they had just traveled before social media, they would have been shut down so fast. I miss social pressure. Story 55. It was not that long ago that all screens, monitors, televisions, and so on were very large. Now they exist in museums. Story 56. Not having people casually walking within the safety barriers at a Formula One circuit while the race is happening. Story 57. We take virtually everything for granted, thinking it is normal until we experience its absence or learn otherwise through education, reading, travel, and life experience. A simple example is choice. Only recently have people, even in developed countries, had so much choice in consumer goods, whom they can marry and associate with, what they can do for a living and where, and in choosing leaders. This was not the case for most of human history, and many millions around the world still lack that freedom. Story 58. There is a book by G. Gordon Liddy called When I Was a Kid, This Was a Free Country. His particular political and ideological views aside, the book is an interesting catalog of activities that used to be commonplace in the United States but are now either illegal or highly frowned upon. Story 59. Not quite yet, but increasingly people who were not adults when the Affordable Care Act and all its protections were implemented. Story 60. A common practice or technology that became normalized after a specific birth year is the widespread use of smartphones. People born after the early 2000s likely grew up with smartphones as a natural part of their lives and do not understand the world without them. Story 61. Airport security includes removing shoes, full-body scanners, and disposing of water bottles. These measures feel normal because an entire generation grew up after September 11, 2001. Story 62. You used to hear airplanes as they passed overhead, even when they were far up there, to the point that it would interrupt conversations, not drown out, just awkward to talk over. Now the engines have become much quieter, and they are silent specks going overhead. Story 63. The smoking ban in Ireland prohibits smoking inside public buildings such as pubs and restaurants. It was introduced in 2004, making Ireland the first country in the world to ban smoking in any workplace. Story 64. In Northern Ireland, large peace walls separate communities, and people know that certain areas of the city are off-limits depending on their community. Story 65. Practically everything. The concept of time, as in dividing the day and adhering to precise increments, for example. The modern-day concepts of privacy and modesty. The 40-hour workweek. Story 66. No insects on your windscreen. 50 to 85% of butterflies, beetles, bees, and other insects have disappeared. Only cultivated honeybees are surviving slightly. Story 67. Black currants are unavailable in the United States. You say currants to an American and they think of a type of raisin. But black currants, along with related red and white currants, are their own type of berry and are delicious. They also make great juices and jams. They are popular in Europe, where in German they are called Johannisbeeren, but they are virtually unknown in the US. This is because growing them was banned in the US in 1911. The plants were carriers of a fungus that affected lumber pines, and the lumber industry opposed their cultivation. By 1966, better cultivation techniques and fungicides had been developed, so the federal government allowed states to decide whether to lift the ban. A few states did. In the 1970s, strains immune to the fungus became available, but because the plant had been illegal for 55 years, there was little demand and many states did not lift the ban. More states have lifted the ban since then, but growing black currants is still illegal in some parts of the US. Even where it is legal, few people cultivate them because they are not well known. This is unfortunate for American berry lovers, who are missing out. If you ever get the chance, try black currants. Story 68. When I was a child, my brother and I were fortunate to have a teacher who taught us about financial literacy. We were amazed when we taught our parents how to use credit cards and the importance of paying them off every month. We missed out on many great opportunities because they insisted on paying with cash or check, even for large purchases. I wondered how they could be so inexperienced with this. Then I learned that credit cards were not widely used until fairly recently. They have been around for decades, but only became common in the 2000s. My parents did not know how to use them until the late 1990s. Story 69. Drinking alcohol. If it were introduced as a new product on the market today, it would not be allowed because it is clearly harmful to our health. However, since it is a social norm, many people drink despite it causing several cancers and diseases. Story 70. Smoke-free bars, smoke-free flights, everyone available 24/7, smart home and mobile devices eavesdropping on everything. No opportunity to walk to the gate to take visitors to their flight home. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.